Hi there, my name is Tammy Davis, and I want to thank you very much for joining me. If this is new, if this is your first time here, then welcome. I appreciate you very much. If you've been with me for a while, please understand I appreciate you just as much. So I just really happy to be talking about, well, the evolution really of my work, my investigations, and my writing. Um, and with that said, I had a very interesting email. It was a marketing email, but it came across at the perfect time, beginning of May, and it highlighted May, the different things that are acknowledged during the month of May, such as arthritis and autoimmune, and it's Mental Health Month. Um, Autoimmune disorders, arthritis, fibromyalgia. Allergies, asthma. I mean, all of these things were noted as getting recognized with specific days, even preeclampsia day. But it's very interesting to me to see that because none of it seems the same. And that's kind of the culture we've been raised in, that each diagnosis or each health issue is independent of the other. It's separated, right? And we get that. I mean, it makes sense because that's how they're treated. Um, it also, explains what the hubbub is all about, this hydroxychloroquine, because it's an anti-malarial. It's specifically used for lupus that I'm aware of. Um, but this crossover into the coronavirus has created a lot of issue. And that is because these medications, hydroxychloroquine has been around for a while. And we have different levels of meds where they are influencing activity on various genetic receptors. Other ones where, like in the one that I have in my mind right now, it's currently being used with MS. They're looking into being able to use it with psoriasis as well. And it's pretty much it just has two very specific actions that influence the nerve 2 activity. And nerve 2 is a transcription factor, is a protein transcription factor that is known for its ability to help regulate the stress response. Okay, they know this, and so these medications, again, they vary. Um, Yet the challenge that like I started to say, we face is that we view these health issues as separate. And although malaria and lupus and coronavirus appear to be very different illnesses, um, they're not. Just like, arthritis or MS or lupus or allergies or any kind of mental health concern, these are not separate. And that's a very difficult thing for us to wrap our heads around. Um, the the common denominator is histamine. Now, it's interesting, for years, I've been doing these videos now for 4.5 years, and histamine intolerance has been a big topic. That one gets a lot of attention. You hear about it a lot. And again, that's not even separate. If I actually came out and said, what if we're all living with histamine intolerance? Would be an interesting factor, wouldn't it? But the way I see it is we are. And the reason for that is, and I've talked about this in other videos, so if you've heard this before, feel free to tune this out. I don't know where I'm going with all of this, or stick with me, however this goes. But when the body is threatened, and that could be environmental, it could be physical, it doesn't make any difference. When there is a threat, the body cannot distinguish the difference between a real threat and an emotional one, meaning doubt, worry, fear, fear of things that we can, you know what I'm saying, mental and emotional, fear of losing a relationship, right? Fear of losing a job. Um, so I'm not talking about like fear of being hit by a car because you're standing in the middle of the street. That's a different thing. I hope you get my point. It comes down to the body cannot distinguish the difference between what is perceived as a potential threat versus what really is a threat. The bottom line is the chemistry is all the same. Oxidative stress is activated. The DNA communicates with, it's in constant communication with the environment. And at that point, oxidative stress is the body switches gears. Sorry, I'm trying to think and talk at the same time. The body switches gears and produces this oxidative stress, which then, in fact, is where the inflammation comes from. This is meant to be a temporary response. That's simple. It's meant to be temporary. But yet it's not. Okay, we clearly know that it's not. We have increase in degenerative health issues all the time. I mean, they're just growing in numbers. And that's because of the environment. I hate to say it, but it is. It's the foods, it's the air, it's the drinks, it's the body care, it's the personal care, it's the house cleaning care, it's the 5G, it's the 4G. I mean, it's all of this technology that we've introduced. And then, of course, then there's the medication that we've introduced. Oh, and then lest we forget, now, as of right now, May 2nd, 2020, we still have, the country is just now coming back from being closed down for nearly 6 weeks. So there's been a lot of emotional distress. And here's what's interesting to me. I work a lot with the Amish people. I speak with them a lot. And I've spoken to several of them today. And the question keeps coming up about what's actually going on, because they don't have access to mainstream media. That's just not part of their lifestyle. I'm sure you probably already know that. So they ask me, and then they started telling me about their experiences. And, of course, there's the concern about catching a virus, but the fact is that they're not getting it. Their life went on as normal. They still go to work because they do work. They run their stores. They run their shops. They got, they're farming. They're doing everything. Life has not changed for the Amish. So it's kind of weird when, their drivers who are non-Amish show up with masks on and start talking to them about things, and they know this stuff is going on, and the rest of us are like panicking, and yet they're the ones there's no known cases among the Amish. At least the ones that I'm in contact with, they don't know of anybody that's gotten it. So as I pointed out to them, the few that I talked to today, the numbers don't bear out. Why we used this particular virus to scare people or manipulate people emotionally is beyond me. But that level of stress is what's causing people to go into full-on anxiety attacks, depression, relationship issues, higher levels of pain, because we're all worried. Okay, we're all worried, understandably so. But let's just, like I said, the numbers don't bear out, and even in the sense that when we look at the flu, and okay, so let me be really clear. The rhinovirus, the influenza virus, and the coronavirus are not the same viruses. They're different forms of a virus. Although the symptoms can look similar, they are in fact different viruses. And clearly, the coronavirus that's been going on appears to be quite severe. It can be severe, but so can the flu. And when they measure the flu season, there are as many people dying from the flu around the world. But, the one conversation I find is interesting that people are just getting all uppity about, well, show me, this is currently, who do you know? Who do you know who's gotten the coronavirus? Who do you know? Show me I'm like, stop it. Because if we started taking a random sampling of people, most of us don't know people who've passed away from the flu. Most of us don't know people who have passed away from, a drug overdose. Most of us don't know people who have had a drug injury, whereas the medication interacted poorly with their body or with something else they were taking, and they lost their life to it. There's people losing their life all the time, tragically. It's not a wonderful thing to think about. People are losing their lives as a result of all of these things. But the fact is this virus is not any more damaging than anything else that's going on. And I should say it's not any more damaging than a flu. It's not any more damaging than addiction. It's just that we are sitting here worried about it. And what does this mean to us financially? I mean, just the financial hit alone is compromising us. And so this is jacking our histamine. Again, so that's a fear, right? That the even though we can sit here and tell ourselves we're going to be okay and everything, the body cannot distinguish the difference between that and a tree going to fall on you. It just knows, that your body's communicating with whatever's going on. The signals are coming in. Oh my God, we need to be protected. Oh my God, things need to be, all systems go. And so now the first line of defense is mast cells. Okay, mast cells are released. And what does a mast cell carry? It carries histamine. And this is the very first thing that goes on. And again, this is what actually connects every single health issue that we have, whether we're talking about the lupus and the arthritis and the fibromyalgia or schizophrenia or depression or anxiety. It's all related, and it all comes back down to the way we are literally reacting to the world, whether we know it or not. In our mind and our emotions, we know how we're reacting, but there's also the other elements in the environment that are also impacting us. And so if we can begin to recognize that there are things that we can do, and it involves doing things differently. Okay, so who am I? Well, first and foremost, I have a background in pharmacology, and I am also a master clinical aromatherapist. I specialize in functional aromatherapy, functional clinical aromatherapy to be exact. And I am forging a new normal in healthcare. And if we're going to do that, we've got to step away from the current teachings. One of which is that, we talk about fermented foods. We talk about body ecology, right? We talk about gut flora. Our idea of swallowing, I mean, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you eat or if you consume foods that from an animal that has been treated with antibiotics, then, a 1 week course a month of probiotics is a good idea. But you don't need to be taking it every day because it will actually aggravate the fool out of your system because and I'm finishing this up in my on my blog, The Ultimate Guide, is the life and times of a virus. Well, it gets a little bit deeper than that, just a virus, but it's about building immune resilience. And I start off talking about viruses, but the bottom line is welcome to my world. I just had a brain fart. I don't have an editor, so I can't change this. So, but like I said, I was working on this blog post, and now I'm blushing because this is humiliating. I can't believe I just did that. Anyway, so oh my gosh, I'll have to come back to it. I have just my brain has completely shut down. How crazy is this? We're forging a new path, forging a new norm. That's right. And so got it back. Um, in my humble opinion, through all of the investigation that I have done and study of virology and immunology and so forth, again, I said I have a background in pharmacology, but I have devoted an extensive amount of years reading and studying, investigating all of the peer-reviewed information, the research that's going on out there. Yeah. And I don't mean to simplify anything, or I don't mean any disrespect to anybody who has gone the full gamut of these educational programs. It's just that I follow these trails, if you will, of thought processes and hypotheses, and so I start to gather information. So it's not trying to simplify this or oversimplify it. However, the more we need to know, the more there is to learn. Okay, so that's one detriment to, and I've learned that myself through all of the research. But one of the things that I've become to discover is that nature itself is not a violent, it looks violent, but it's not malicious. Okay, so in essence, everything is in balance at all times. This was a concept that was very difficult for me to wrap my head around years ago. that even though I feel like my day is out of balance, it's in perfect balance. It's what's supposed to be going on. So when we, in the grand scope of things, when it comes to viruses and bacterias, and I'll get back to probiotics in a minute, because probiotics are bacteria, right? So when we get into the grand scope of viruses and bacteria and animals, yes, we see forest fires. Yes, we see animals fighting. Yes, a virus can invade a bacteria and, eliminate the bacteria. You probably would. You might be interested in this, like I said, the life and times of the virus. But the point is that essentially the world is in balance. What's throwing it and making it unstable and out of balance is man and our introduction of all of this technology. And so instability is stressful to any aspect of nature. And so nature will do what it's designed to do, and that's adapt. Okay, so for instance, a virus is not necessarily dangerous, except for the fact that we're using a shit ton of antimicrobials, antiseptics, and so forth. Right? We're constantly disrupting the Gaia biome. Okay, we're constantly disrupting that, and then we're disrupting the biome of our body. Now, this is where the argument comes in for probiotics. However, if in a stable situation, the body has everything it needs to maintain gut flora. It doesn't need us piling a bunch of probiotics in there. And in fact, probiotics have been linked to, they've found, because it activates the immune system, and especially eczema and psoriasis, the natural killer cells there's high levels of natural killer cells in these skin lesions, and that's because of the probiotics. So probiotics, although they are the good bacteria, too much of a good thing is now a bad thing. It maintains a disruption. This is the reason why people still aren't getting the help. Some people might, but as a collective, it's not really benefiting us. So unless you are consuming something that has been treated with antibiotics, or you yourself are taking antibiotics, 1 week a month of probiotics is pretty much all you need. If you include onions and garlic in your daily diet, that's plenty of inulin to help feed the bacteria in your gut. If you take things like a hydrochloric acid supplement, maybe like a betaine, and potentially digestive enzymes, the hydrochloric acid actually sterilizes the food in your gut. The gut is supposed to produce this. And it doesn't under stress. Okay, it requires acetylcholine to do this. Then when we have enough hydrochloric acid in the gut, this is what maintains a healthy gut flora. So now the food is being sterilized and there's no introduction of bad bacteria. We maintain a balance, and therefore now our dental health is even improved. It's systemically related. Now, that said, in a chronically stressed body, that doesn't mean go take probiotics. What it means is take your hydrochloric acid, take some digestive enzymes to begin help breaking down the food, and start using oils that help to regulate the autonomic nervous system. And they're, again, based on what your current health condition is. If you're taking medications, it's going to be different for you than it would be for somebody else. I am really, really shying away of making any sort of blanket recommendations with oils, because it's just not it's harmful, because I don't want anybody taking the information and then trying it and then having some severe adverse reaction. I just am not going to be a party to that. But that said, essential oils are different in the way that they have the ability to help regulate or interact with the genetic activity, just like other endocrine, other chemicals like medications, like our hormones. An essential oil is very similar in that regard. It's a signaling molecule. Foods which contain our phytonutrients and our minerals and our vitamins, those are different. They're just different, in the sense that they don't regulate genetic activity. They are utilized by the cells. And so when the cells have the proper signals, then they have a better ability to utilize these nutrients. That's the difference between a food. And that's the reason why I strongly advocate for using oils on a daily basis. But there again, it depends on what your current health condition is and if there are any medications involved. That said, you can also utilize them for helping to stabilize digestion. Sorry, I was fishing for a word. Stabilize your digestion and actually stabilize the autonomic nervous system. Therefore, now the body is beginning to produce its own hydrochloric acid. So this is not something you need to stay on for the rest of your life. Then again, if you're chronically stressed, yeah, you actually have to. But probiotics is not what you need. In fact, I had one of my Amish families, took them totally off of probiotics. The young girl had an Epstein-Barr and Lyme both active infections. We managed to get that cleared up and took her off the probiotics, and she's like, the whole family is now taking the hydrochloric acid supplements because they are astounded with how much better they feel without taking the probiotics. So that's it. Probiotics good for 1 week at a time, and that's it. Because otherwise we are disrupting nature, and nature has its ability to regulate itself. So not, again, trying to complicate or simplify matters, but if we actually take a bigger picture here and just recognize the fact that stability is the key. Okay, we don't need to be controlling all of these chemicals. Again, the primary chemical being released at the beginning of any stress reaction is histamine. Do we all have histamine intolerance? Yes. Absolutely, yes. Hands down, without question, yes. So what do? We eliminate things like fermented food. I don't care who's saying it's good for you. I don't care about the body ecology at this point. And when we start to over ferment, that's, or we're having trouble with histamine, the histamine is not being deactivated. It's not being metabolized, which means it's now throwing off our own fermentation cycle. So as we begin to over ferment, okay, now we add histamine to this. Now we have higher levels of, we're stressing the system, higher levels of glucose, that's unusable glucose, and unusable forms of sugar, or glucose specifically. So we have unusable glucose floating around. And now we have inflammation. Okay, so then we have the production of aromatase. You've heard me say this before, and then which converts androgens, including testosterone, into estrogen. And now with all of that and the added levels of glucose, because, well, we're not breaking it down properly due to poor digestion, you have yeast. Okay, yeast naturally lives in the body. Okay, so besides bacteria and virus, this is the one thing I didn't talk about in this blog post, but besides those two, we also have yeast in our body. It naturally is in there, but an overgrowth of yeast develops because of the instability, because of that too much histamine, too much glucose, too much estrogen. I mean, all of this over stuff, all the high level. I mean, this is really clinical, right? But because we're having increasing levels of these oxidative or inflammatory processes happening, yeast grows. What does yeast want? Yeast feeds on sugar. This is, therefore we have a culture or a population of people who claims to be addicted to sugar, who can't get enough carbs. They're just feeding the yeast in their body. So if we begin to come at this from a different perspective and understand that histamine is what's primarily being released, that's the initial, one of the primary chemicals being released because of stress. Okay, so what do we do about stress? We have to get our mind and our emotions in check to the best of our ability. Eliminate the foods that are going to activate or increase histamine levels, or aggravate histamine levels, and that would be your fermented foods. Okay, so that includes alcohol, that includes your fermented cheeses and dairy foods and your meats and veggies, all of it. Just cut it out. Maybe enjoy it sporadically, once a week throughout the month. Nothing wrong with that, and everything in moderation. But this is really where we have to start. And again, you can use oils, you can actually use oils that actually help the DNA communicate more effectively and begin to reduce these histamine levels. But again, not all oils are going to be good for this. okay, because of what's going on with you and what potentially medications. So this is where a professional comes in. And if nothing else, please do not use any pre-made blends, regardless of what it's called. Again, a pre-made blend is as harmful as, um, how do I say this? It's a combination of oils that may or may not be suitable for you. It's kind of like saying it's a one size fits all, and it's not. The best thing you can do for yourself is to start with a single note and make your own blends. And yeah, you might have to change it from time to time, and that's okay. It's better for you. It's a better way of serving yourself. And if that's not what you choose to do, then that's quite all right too. We all have that opportunity to decide what we want to do. All right, so again, with this month of mental health and osteoporosis and arthritis, lupus, fibromyalgia, it's a big month. It's a big month for recognizing that histamine is. It's a month to recognize the fact that it's time to chill out. And this whole coronavirus thing. I'm sorry to everybody who's been affected. If you've lost somebody in your life as a result or have suffered from it, physically or, financially, which I think we all have for the most part, I'm right there with you. And I am so, disturbed by the fact that we all had to be impacted at this level for something that is, here's an example. Um, since the year 2000, 10 million, over 10 million people have died, have lost their lives as a result of what is called drug injury. And that's a drug-related death that's not a deliberate overdose. Over 10 million people in the last 20 years. It's a huge number. I don't think we're going to see that kind of number with the coronavirus. Millions of people lose their life to the flu. So these are tragic stories. The fact that we've been held hostage for this, and I'm sorry if I've offended anybody with that, because that's what it feels like, and it's been far more detrimental to our physical health than anybody could comprehend beyond respiratory issues. The hormonal changes that have occurred in all of us as a result of not knowing how our life was going to unfold, what was going to happen, how we're going to survive, it's a horrible thing. And so my heart is with everybody, and I share this information because we have the ability to not let this get us down. We have the ability to not let this take us down. And it really, really does start with something as simple as the foods that we eat. It really does. And regaining our footing and helping our digestion. It's that simple. Yes, there's other things to do. Absolutely, there are other things to do depending again on your health condition. And I'm sorry for anybody that again has been severely impacted by this, but just know that these simple steps, focusing on your digestion with hydrochloric acid and a betaine and a digestive enzymes, beautiful. Probiotics once a month. Fermented foods maybe one day a week. Use your oils, get some help with oils, because even if it's in a book or a website, personalized use of essential oils is critical these days. Forging a new normal in our healthcare starts now. And so there are oils that you can use that will make a huge difference in the way you feel and the way you actually overcome whatever you're dealing with. They're not the final answer. This does not take the place of your doctor's advice. What I'm encouraging, that's the reason why I won't make any blanket recommendations, because whatever your doctor is suggesting, please do it. But there's other things that you can do nutritionally, as in, like I said, with the digestion and with the oils that will help make a huge difference. I mean, strides really get you from here to there successfully and safely. Anyway, thanks very much. And I hope you are doing well. I love you guys, and I will be back soon.